out and unpacked the value addition. It's beyond my expectation. Thank you so much. Members, you have heard it yourselves, how citrus and melon peelings can fetch 115 million. And yet for us, we leave them to rot and become manure. So there are a lot of opportunities in value addition. And so it is up to us, especially investors in the Investment Club Association of Uganda, to link and research and make fast decisions about where we want to invest. I don't want to waste a lot of your time because it's your day to ask questions, to learn more about value addition. So I want to open up the meeting. You can have people ask. If you have a question, you can raise your hand, then I'll pick on you. And then so that Daniel, we shall have a round of five questions. Daniel, I think that is, can it work? Five questions?
That is perfectly acceptable.
Okay, let me have my boss, Francis Twinamasiko. Francis, you have the...
Thank you very much, Richard, and thank you very much, Daniel, for this wonderful presentation. I hope we will get a copy and read through and try to understand the facts you have presented. I would like to ask Daniel, why do you think that given these opportunities that we have in value addition, why do you think that when we get money, most of us, when we get money, we go into real estate, we go into hotels? What's the problem? Is it that we don't know these opportunities? That's one. But the other thing is, when you look at the agricultural sector, you have talked about milling, but what about our milk? How do we exploit the opportunities in the milk? How do we exploit the opportunities in the potatoes, Irish potatoes, matoke? We have a lot of matoke, cows. Some of us are growing cows. We are planting trees. How do you exploit these value chains? Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. You can lower the hand. Members, you can type your email in the chat room so that my colleague Betty will be downloading them, and then we shall use those to send you this presentation. Any other question? Thank you, Francis, for that question. Any other question? Please raise your hand so that I can, yes. Gizaza, the floor is yours. Philbert, Gizaza.
Thank you. My question is a bit macro. Does the tax regime in Uganda foster the investment environment? I'm not currently doing any business, some other profession, but I would love to venture into business. But the stories I hear from my other colleagues and friends who are in business, they are crying out foul. They pay taxes left, right, and center. So much as you impress us with these beautiful ideas, they remain just rhetoric and on paper as long as the bottlenecks of the economy are still biting. That is on the issue of taxes. And then secondly, corruption. How would, again, that kind of environment enable that investment is flourishing, where members of the club would start such kind of schemes or start projects and then have the local authorities cleared off? If anything you do in a country, be it petty, someone is asking you bribe to get this. So have you thought of that? Thank you.
Thank you, Gizaza. Is it Rafael Orisa? The floor is yours. Orisa?
Hello, thank you.
Yes.
This is Orisa Raphael, old man of the clan. Thank you, and you'll excuse me, I'm traveling. My network could be not very clear and the noise in the background. However, I have some very serious issues here. One, the first one is, as you Uma, how do you support the local entrepreneurs who want to go into this value addition? What key roles do you do or do you undertake to help with these small scale businesses or young entrepreneurs, the startups that want to enter into this field? Two, we have had a number of challenges in this country where the support system does not support the startup. The focus is more into direct foreign investment. What about the local entrepreneurs who are the owners of this economy, who has got the capacity and the potential to produce and add value to their produce? Because most of these foreigners take back their finances in terms of what? Repatriations of funds. What is left here to support the local what? The local community and the local economy. We are talking of value addition, but when you look into the development, the capital development here and all that kind of thing, at the end of the day, how does the local person benefit at the end of the day? That remains a big challenge for us. And as a woman, what role are you playing to advocate for the local people here? That is very important for us. Thank you. And then the other thing I wanted to say is about the competitiveness, say in terms of market, because we are talking of this US and all that kind of thing, but the local person, the local entrepreneur here, do they have the means to do that? How do they get support to captivate themselves or to what their appetite to invest invest their little money before you realize the URA and whatever is coming in, whereas the big boys come in here and they get a tax holiday of 10 years, 5 years, after which you don't see them again. What happens? Our people, what happens to them? Thank you.
Thank you, Orisa. Thank you. Allow me give an opportunity to Francis, since there is also a question around tax regime. Francis, do you want to comment? And also,
No, I was wondering the last slide. I don't know whether the second last slide where Daniel said that we should not think. Is he saying that we should not even think about the profitability of the business? How are we going to invest in businesses that don't give us profits if you are not going to analyze? Thank you.
Jackie, you have the floor.
Thank you, Richard. Mine is a quick one. When we come to agro-processing, how the smallholder farmers fitting in, especially when it comes to Bureau of Standards, when someone has invested in different value addition and they have to meet the criteria that is formed, how are they giving them some bit of incentive to see that a smallholder farmer down there coming up with a product, let's say in yogurt or something, is not put off the market because of the standards, the Bureau of Standards. Then lastly, if farmers are interested in, if we are interested, an investor is interested in machinery, as the UMA got a specific reference, especially for value addition machinery, and is there a way that they can help investors when it comes to acquiring machinery? not in terms, just giving references of where they could get machinery for some of the value addition. Thank you.
Daniel, I think you can help us respond to some of those issues that have been raised.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you for those of you who've asked the question. We'll start with the first question. I think it was around why, it was from Francis, who was asking if all these opportunities exist, why are people going into real estate? And why aren't they going into all these opportunities as we present them? I think it's a couple of things. Number one is we tend to be comfortable with things we already know. For the longest time, and I blame Uma, I blame even Richard at the ministry, and a lot of us have kept the discussions on value addition at very high level. We've kept people thinking that manufacturing and value addition are extremely complicated. And I think time is right for us to break it down to the level that everyone understands that, wait a minute, if we are throwing away so many pineapples a week in our markets, buying a sun dryer at about $1 million shillings and drying these pineapples is value addition. And there's an opportunity there because there's a market for dried fruits in the world. So it's about the lack of information, and that's one of the things that we're trying to resolve. Part of it is through such engagements, but it's also about investment clubs and other investors thinking outside the box. I think we've gotten too safe with thinking that, yeah, immediately we make the first 10 million as a club, we look for where land is at 10 million and we buy it because that's what we know. But we need to start thinking outside the box and say, okay, is this the best use of this amount of money? Secondly, have we thought about diversifying our portfolio so that we're not only in land, we're probably in bonds, we're also in manufacturing and a couple of others, so that we hedge our risk, because I think that's the best way to do investments. The second question was around the agriculture sector and value addition, and whether that's an opportunity and what opportunities we can find in there. And I think I mentioned it when I said that some of the items I brought to the fore around the maize mill, for example, around potato crisps, around gonja crisps, if you may, lie in value adding to agriculture. Because while we've significantly worked on helping farmers improve their yield, we haven't worked on solving where this yield goes. If we do not do that, we end up with situations where you have those fluctuations in pricing. 1 year, the price of maize is 400 shillings a kilo. The next year, it drops to 150 shillings a kilo. Why? Because there is no sustained market for some of this produce. The farmer then cannot plan. But as an association, and I know government also, there's a lot of investment in trying to encourage value addition in agriculture, adding value to agricultural produce. Because as Uganda, one of the key advantages we have is that while everyone else struggles to produce organic products, in Uganda, we don't have a struggle to produce organic products, partly because many of our farmers cannot afford the fertilizer and the pesticides. So they end up growing their products organically anyway. So we already have a tick on that front. The problem is we've not moved to certify that these products are organic and therefore benefit from the significant market available for organic products internationally. Perhaps those are some of the initiatives we need to take into consideration there. The other question, and a bunch of questions actually, were around the tax regime and whether the tax regime can foster value addition. And my answer to that is to say that in determining your investment, it is important that you factor in the cost of tax. Fortunately, as we speak today, we are at a point where new measures to facilitate clearer tax management, such as the electronic fiscal receipting and invoicing system, have come into place. These measures then mean that a business is able to analyze its tax obligations and know where these tax obligations lie. But relatedly, is that many areas within value addition have the advantage that many of their inputs are either exempt or zero rated in as far as VAT is concerned. And as such, you benefit from off the bat getting some of these inputs at no tax to you, especially in agro-processing, I would say. On the incentive side, yes, I do agree that while previously there was a significant skewing of incentives to foreign investment rather than local investment, there's been an effort to change that. Because today's incentives, many of them, if you read them, they will allocate a benefit to a foreign investor who meets a very high threshold, say $10 million, and then allocate a similar benefit to a local investor who invests 10% of that. So I think we're moving in the right direction. Is it ideal? Definitely not. We want these figures to go down even lower. And our appeal to the Ministry of Finance has been to say that, look, when you set the threshold for local investors at $1 million, you need to be mindful of the fact that several of us Ugandans have never touched $1 million. Some of us have never had $1 million in our families or in our generations. I speak for myself as well. And therefore, we need to set in place incentives that speak to the reality on the ground. We need to be able to incentivize the small players to access some of these incentives. And I think there is listening going on, and I'm very, very excited by the prospect of what's coming out in the next budget cycle in terms of incentives to support small-scale players. I will link that to the question around SME development and the fact that smaller players usually lack access to support services. One of the questions in there was, what support services do we offer? The other one was around, I'll lump that together with access to machinery that Jackie asked. I'll also lump that together with the question on business support services. As an association, we are starting next year providing business support services to our member companies, so that an SME can come to us with challenges on tax, with challenges on marketing, with challenges on access to labor, and we can help them solve some of these challenges. Because like you've pointed out, we've noted that several of our members suffer this, but have nowhere to run. And we're saying, as an association, this is something we are taking on because we think it's valuable that we do. But beyond us, there is the Enterprise Uganda is offering similar services. Stanbic Bank Business Incubator is offering similar services. Uganda Industrial Research Institute goes even further. It offers you access to machinery so that in addition to thinking about an idea, you can even test it out on machinery that is not yours, so that you see if the idea works. And that also goes to answer our research question around whether I'm encouraging people not to think at all. No, I'm only saying, don't overthink it. It's not as complicated as we make it out to be. Start where you are with what you have, and the rest will follow. Now, the other question on support to SMEs is around access to machinery. Jackie asked that. And yes, we do offer support to our members I'll tell you right now that internationally, in Italy and in the US, as well as in Germany, there are companies that specialize in providing support to African startups to access either used or semi-used machinery. Now, when I say used, it's not DMC machinery. It's just to say, because of the level of competition in Europe, companies traditionally have to upgrade their machinery probably every 2 years. In Uganda, we can still use some of that machinery. It's actually considered new because it can still work. It's just that it's not as efficient as the machinery you would need in Europe. And these machines are available at very affordable costs. So we can help link to some of these providers of such machinery. The last one is on, what was that? Local entrepreneurs and competitiveness, whether we can be competitive in the international market that I'm touting. And I think the answer to that is yes. For the simple reason that today, as I speak, Ugandan coffee is taking over the market. It's nothing special, it's coffee grown in Uganda, but everyone is lining up to buy our coffee. And we're saying, why not add value to it by processing and therefore add $1 to the amount you would get per kilo? We are talking about vanilla and the fact that today, I personally know someone who is exporting vanilla to Sweden. But because they've documented the sourcing of this vanilla locally, they are able to sell it in Sweden at a premium price because they sell it as organic vanilla and they can prove that it's organically grown and organically sourced and the farmers are paid well. Because of that, it's fetching 5 times the international price of vanilla in Sweden. There's an opportunity there for us. I know that last week, I was at the Inter-Africa Trade Fair, and I know that there is a Ugandan who signed a deal of delivering 5 container loads of processed garlic per week to someone coming from Ghana because they need it in their production process. So the opportunities, what I'm trying to say, the opportunities actually exist. It's just that we have not prepared ourselves to access some of these. I hope I've tried to answer all the questions. If there's any I've missed out, I will be happy to go back to it. Yes, sorry, there's one more. The issue of the Bureau of Standards and whether there is a special package for startups and small players. Yes, there is. The Bureau of Standards, as recently as last month, announced a cut of pricing for SMEs and for startups. So where people are previously paying as high as 1 million shillings, for some of those products, certification is as low as 100,000. And that definitely means that competitiveness goes up because you then bring a product to the market that is certified. And yes, organizations such as UMA, Private Sector Foundation, Uganda Small Scale Industries Association, Federation of Small and Medium Enterprises, all these organizations have running memorandums of understanding with UNBS to assist members to access certification. And we even go a step further by saying, look, if a member has started the process of certifying their product, it doesn't matter, allow them to go to the shelf as they work out the paperwork, because we feel everyone should be let go to the market as soon as they express an interest. I submit, Richard.
Thank you, Daniel. You've really given it a good service. There's someone in the chat room, Godfrey, who says he cannot raise a hand, but would like to ask a question. Godfrey, are you still on? Who would want to?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks. I think it did cover what I needed to ask. Maybe just to thank him for the elaborate presentation. And perhaps as time goes on, one would want to find out when the follow-up presentation is going to be. Thank you.
Yeah, Godfrey, don't worry, we shall share. That's why we are requesting that members drop their emails in the chat room so that My colleague Betty will be getting them, and then we shall be able to send the presentation. Jackie, your hand is still up? Do you have another question you want to raise? Okay. Do we have any other questions that we feel? Someone in the chat room called Goretti's Galaxy says that the linkage with this gospel to save towards small-scale manufacturing at CMA was not clear. Please elaborate. Daniel.
Yes.
Someone called Goretti's Galaxy is saying the linkage with this gospel to save towards small scale manufacturing and CMA was not clear. Please elaborate. So that is one. Members, do you have any other questions? So that we want to close this session a bit to make it short so that we can.
Hello?
Yes. Francis? Hello, Francis, did you want to come back? Hello? Mpaire? Any other member with a question so that we close off this session and then.
Hello?
Yes, Francis, you have the floor.
Yeah, okay, yeah. One issue is that I would like to thank Daniel once again for his comments on taxes. But I would like to add one point that taxes really shouldn't be a burden to value addition. I think if you are adding value, and you have a challenge with taxes, you just contact the Minister of Finance, we should be able to solve the challenge. That's one. But importantly is that all inputs into the production, your production processes are not taxed. So I think tax should not be a problem at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Daniel, I think you can handle those that have come in.
Richard?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, Richard. I want to thank.
Yes.
Yes, I want to thank Mr. Virunji for that wonderful presentation, very insightful and encouraging. I would like to ask from his presentation, he did give an option for people who may not want to go through the hassle of starting a new business and can invest in already good or companies with good success stories. I just wanted some highlight on that. As young people, we may want to look out on such opportunities. Where do we get such information and how does it really work? If you can just give a highlight on that. Thank you.
Virunji, before you respond, one more question. Someone called Amanya Amos, I think, is the one who has just Virunji talked about possibilities. I think he has given that, so you can respond now.
Hello. Hello.
We can't hear you, Daniel.
Hello.
Yes, I think there's someone trying to ask another question.
Yes, it's me, Daniel.
Please proceed.
Yes, I do thank you for the presentation, but I wonder if it's only rhetoric. Because the person who introduced you said that you're a big fan of the Singaporean story. Now, Singapore achieved this much talked about story through pragmatic government policies like education, zero corruption, and policies that protect their own farmers. It's not here in Uganda. And I can tell you that I'm a mango farmer with quite a few acres. In 2019, I struggled to find a market and I had to run to Riam in Kawempe. It's disturbing that I was told that Riam does not buy local mangoes. They actually get concentrates from Lebanon. Now, if a government cannot have policies to protect us, really, do you think that Uganda can did it as Singapore did it? Thank you.
Daniel, you can now respond.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for the questions. The first question, I think, was around the issue, explaining further the support to small-scale manufacturers and the linkages that we are developing. And I think a lot of it is around access to machinery, enabling access to machinery. Number two is around access to inputs, because one of the things we've found out along the way is that several of our companies also provide inputs for other companies. For example, if you're going into packaging, you're probably going to need plastic film, and you need that introduction to someone doing plastic film, but someone who will supply you at a friendly rate, given that you're a member of the UMA. So we do those linkages, but we don't stop there. We also provide mentorship. To say you're starting out in agro-processing, let's say you're making maize meal, maize flour, and you would like access to someone who is already in the sector to understand their challenges, to understand what has worked for them and what hasn't. They're always willing to share this information, because at the end of the day, it's what made them who they are, and they're willing to help. So we work with you to access some of these, and so on and so forth. So my advice would be, come through to us. At least our location is known by most people. Uma Showgrounds, Lugogo. Come through and our teams will be happy to talk to you and see what level of support we're able to offer you, and also explain it to you. The second question was Amania's around aspect of investing without necessarily being involved in the day-to-day of running the company. What are the opportunities there? One opportunity is through corporate bonds. That is, companies are always looking for financing, but may not be able to access that financing through the regular stock market and through the banks. There's private discussions that go on where you come to Daniel, and where Daniel needs money, we come to you and say, look, we have Daniel here, he needs so much money. If you invest, he's willing to offer this. Can we take both of you before the Capital Markets Authority? Because of course you need a guarantor, who is the Capital Markets Authority, to protect your investment. And that's their role, to then put in place the paperwork and help you then invest with the peace of mind of knowing that Daniel is not going to run away tomorrow, that you're going to be able to get hold of him along the way. That's part of how we do this. The other bit is we have quite a number of private equity funds that are starting up in Uganda that look out for investment schemes and that look out for investment opportunities and bring the two together so that people can invest in some of these emerging opportunities. That could be another avenue through which to invest. But then lastly, it could be also a private arrangement that you have your $1 million seated on your account. You see a company that is of interest to you, and you would like to get in touch with them and say, look, I see you, I see what you're doing, I think I like what you're doing. Are you open to the idea of taking on a new shareholder? And more often than not, they will actually sit down with you to listen to what you have to offer. The worst they can say is no. That's what I always say. The worst in such situation is a no. Then no one is going to beat you for asking about whether they are open for investment. So take advantage of that opportunity and make use of it. Then to the last question around whether I'm not building castles in the air. When I speak of Singapore, when I speak of South Korea, When I speak lately of Ethiopia and where it has been able to move, Bangladesh, Vietnam, I could go on and on. And while I do agree that we have a ways to go in terms of developing our policy, macroeconomic policy, to fully support private investment, I think we can't say we are not doing something. Because if we were not doing something, we wouldn't have the case where people are disinvesting in Kenya and coming to invest in Uganda because they see the opportunities here. It means there is something working. There's something working, but we could do it better. Mine would be, let's work with you. Allow us to work with you to identify the opportunities, but also work with us to highlight the challenges. Because one thing I've learned over the last 4 years is that, yes, the Ministry of Finance does economic policy, but oftentimes they rely on you, they rely on me, they rely on the Ugandans to tell them which policy is not working and how they can be improved. And we can work with you to articulate some of these issues. You rightly pointed out the issue of access to market for farmers. And it's one of the things we are lobbying about as a manufacturing association to say, how do we address this issue? Part of it starts at the point of inputs. And I know part of the story of why concentrate is imported. Part of it is that several of our farmers, the quality of materials they present is not the kind that is required in some of these processing facilities. But we are saying, yes, be that as it may, what other value addition can be had? And that's why today you're having a fruit factory being set up by Uganda Development Corporation in Nakasongola to solve some of these problems. But even as that happens, you're having Operation Wealth Creation provide better seedlings so that we continue to develop some of these areas. I am an optimist by nature. I remain optimistic. I still think that if all those people, all those countries did it, if Mulwana, Madivani, Mukwano did it, we can also do it. Thank you very much.
I like that. Thank you, Daniel. I know Robert Mafabi wants to talk, but you know, as investors, we keep time. It's already 7:30 and we must close. For me, Daniel, I really appreciate your time and sharing experience and knowledge around value addition. Value addition is critical and government is. Our new PSST for the Ministry of Finance is a guru in industrialization. So there is no point looking back, but going forward. It is interesting that the realities now, as Daniel has showed us, is that almost everything sells. Even peelings can sell, you added value on them. Ladies and gentlemen, the patron of Investment Club Association normally closes this meeting. And I want to invite my colleague, Madam Diana Nanono, to represent the patron of Uganda, of Investment Clubs Association of Uganda, Dr. Peter Ngategize, to give closing remarks. Diana, are you there?
Thank you, Richard Mobiru. Thank you, members, for attending this meeting. And thank you, Mr. Daniel Birungi, for this for the wonderful presentation this evening, which was quite insightful. I bring greetings from Dr. Peter Ngategize, the patron of ICAO, who says that he's happy with the progress that is being made and that he's impressed with the leadership of ICAO. The topic on value addition is very critical and dear to the government of Uganda.